All right, we have a public hearing that's going to occur before the actual village board meeting tonight, so a little different than normal. So we'll have the public hearing. We'll do the pledge of allegiance. I'll open up the public hearing then. And then once the public hearing is closed, then we'll move into the board meeting. So we'll start off with a roll call at 6:32.
President Osterman,
Here.
trustee Plotecker. Here. Trustee Moonen,
Here.
trustee Quinn,
Here.
treasurer Gerard. Administrator Nicker. Here. And clerk Patrick to record the minutes.
Thank you. We'll stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, notice was given that a public hearing would be held on Wednesday, April 12th, 2023 at the Lisbon Village Hall located at West 234 North 8676 Woodside Road, Lisbon, Wisconsin at 6:30 p.m. prior to the village board meeting for the purpose of receiving public comment on in reaction to a proposed amendment to the Sussex Lisbon Sanitary Sewer Service Area. The public hearing is being sponsored by the Village of Lisbon and the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. A draft staff memorandum describing the proposed sanitary sewer service area amendment, including a map of the area, is on file at the offices of the village and at SewerPack. The sewer service area amendment will specifically add service to the property located at North 71 West 22339 Good Hope Road, LSPT 0237.980. Do we have any presentation on it other than that? Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of this public hearing tonight? You want to step up to the microphone, just state your name and address, please.
I am Christine Cole. I live at N71 W22339 Good Hope Road. I just really have a few questions. I understand this has passed. I'm hoping it has anyway. So I was just wondering how it proceeds, when it will start, the cost, issues like that. So.
Okay.
Any answers?
So some of those questions, I don't know if we can really answer tonight.
No.
Today is, this is divided in one.
Okay. Okay, so should I stay for later or you'll just contact me if it has been passed or not? Okay. All right, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on this public hearing? Anyone on Zoom?
If anyone would like to speak during the public hearing, please use the raise hand function on Zoom.
Looks like you're both from Ontex, so I'm sure you're not. All
No hands raised on Zoom.
right, any comments from the questions from the commission?
No.
All right, we'll close the public hearing then at 6:35. And open up the village board meeting then at 6:35, excuse me. Item 2 is citizens' comments. If anyone has any comments tonight to make pertaining to the agenda or anything else, please step up to the mic, state your name and address.
My name is Robert Gall. Spelled Gall. I reside at North 72 W22454 Good Hope Road, Lisbon 53089. I'm here due to the complaints I filed against Mr. Ronald Thorne at N72 W22484 Good Hope Road, Lisbon 53089. Mr. Thorne is in the property west of mine. I'm here in regards to my written complaints I filed on October 5th of 2022 and January 12th of 23. I want to address the concern I have due to the possible loss of my property value due to the non-compliant activities held at Mr. Ronald Thorne's property. Why am I here? And why I filed complaints? First, I am concerned about the reduction of my property value due to the illegal activities of Mr. Thorne operating a commercial business that includes repairing all types of vehicles. In October of 2022, Mr. Thorne admitted to administration that he was conducting a commercial business. This violates zoning ordinances, as I understand it, listed in Chapter 11, Paragraph E, by conducting a retail business in an R2 zone residential property. Mr. Thorne was and is using his front lawn for the first 9 months of 2022 for the parking of used vehicles to be repaired or sold. This violates ordinances in Chapter 11, Paragraph F, page 173, creating an abnormal nuisance to the surrounding property owners. President Osterman stated Mr. Thorne was to keep his front lawn clear of vehicles that are not his, and that Mr. Thorne is aware of the specifics of the ordinance requiring prolonged parking on non-impervious surfaces. I would also like to address the fact that Mr. Thorne has attempted to build an additional 400 square foot steel frame building with a 400 square foot concrete slab on his property without a building permit. I was informed by the village president and the administrator and building inspector that the building was illegal and had to come down. This is due to the overbuilding of the construction on Mr. Thorne's property. The buildings are still up. Most vehicles that are brought to Mr. Thorne for the repair are used vehicles that are parked on the lawn, making it possible for contaminating the ground. These vehicles could potentially have broken and worn parts that allow fluids, leaks such as gasoline, oil, brake, transmission, antifreeze, and hydraulic liquids. Again, these fluids could possibly contaminate the ground. Mr. Thorne has pressure washed and snow plowed to the east of his property line, which is parallel to our property line, which is parallel to a swale that straddles our joint property line. One of my concerns is Mr. Thorne and my property have constant running groundwater that are directly below our basements and his repair garage. My property is lower than his. How long does it take until years of contamination leach into my property? Due to the land and stone shelf that's my house is built on, my well is only 30 feet deep. And it's 38 feet from the property line. Surface and subsurface contamination has already begun. I have already lost perennials 5 feet from the property line each year after the spring thaw. For the past 3 years in 2022, this spring, I had a 20-year-old old pine died within 2 weeks of the snow melt. That tree was 25 feet from the joint property line. Is this due to the hazardous contamination from Mr. Torrance property? One has to inquire. In summary, Mr. Torn has disregarded the Village of Lisbon zoning ordinance. He is shown to be non-compliant and dismissive to the village president and the village administrator's verbal request to comply with the zoning ordinances of the Village of Lisbon. He has had months to comply. I asked the Village of Lisbon at this time for the betterment of the village properties to maintain their true value. I asked the Village of Lisbon take action, whether it be written or legal, against Mr. Torn to mandate he conform to the Village R2 zoning ordinance. Are there any questions?
We can't actually ask you questions at this time. It's just your time to comment.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments tonight? Right. Move on to item 3, then the consent agenda. Items listed under the consent agenda are considered in one motion unless a village board member requests that an item be removed for separate consideration. I'm going to request that items C, D, and F be pulled and held over to another meeting. So that would leave us with A, B, E, G for consideration tonight, unless someone would like one removed. If not, is there a motion then on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as A, B, D, E, F, and G.
No D,
No D.
sorry, if I listed it, sorry.
Okay. Oh, I had
A,
C
B,
down.
E, and G, sorry.
Okay. I had C listed. Okay, 8, yep.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Second by Becky. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Mr. President, I'd like to correct C and D for possible motion.
Oh, so tonight. Okay, I
So-
misunderstood you. All right,
So for, we requested C and D due to the fact that the amounts were not correct. The amounts for both of those garage doors are $24,834. I ask for your approval of C and D.
joint, correct? The joint total.
Each $24,834 each. For C and for D.
Questions, comments? Is there a motion?
Is this just for Steve?
This would be C and D then.
Right, for C and D, approval of
The
C and
totals.
D for $24,834 for each C and D.
But item F, we still want to hold that off until
Correct.
next meeting. All right.
Just for a point of clarification, that total you stated out loud was approved at committee level. Or did that change since then?
That was what was approved at committee level.
Okay.
And so this, we're asking the board to consider this.
Thank you. I would make a motion on the floor for C and D with the corrected amounts in both items C and D separately as $24,834.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Becky. So it looks like we're about $5,000 more. Is that right? Then this ad here. It's fun adding on an iPhone.
I'm gonna go with 3,000.
Was it 3,000? Okay. I must have typed it wrong twice there, but
No more than.
okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And then we'll hold over F then. Item 4 is accounts payable, authorizing the payment of the Falls Auto Parts bill dated 3/23/23 in the amount of $501.20. And 4/13/23 in the amount of $343.97. Any questions or comments, or is there a motion on that item?
Make a motion to authorize payment to Falls Auto Parts Incorporated for bills dated 3/23 and 4/13 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Item B, authorizing the payment of the remaining bills dated 3/23/23 for the amount of $245,569.41 and 4/13/23 for the amount of $404,255.80.
Our top 5 expenses were $77,993.18 for US Bank Corp., $50,721.70 for emergency disaster cover, $13,576.63 to Anthem Blue Cross, $6,623.93 for Rural Mutual, $5,640.32 for EH Wolf and Son. For the 400,000, the top 5 expenses were $173,799.21 for Motorola Solutions, $120,915.14 for the Village of Sussex, $24,111.92 for Premier Building Inspections, $17,628.90 for We Energies, and $12,802.30 for Reliant Fire Apparatus. I ask for your approval.
Any comments or questions? Or is there a motion on those bills?
I'll make a motion to authorize payment of remaining bills dated 3/23 and 4/13 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second it.
By Becky. Any final discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We have item C, authorizing the payment of the utility district bills dated 4/12/23 for the amount of $8,436.15. Okay, overview on those. Any questions on that, or is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the payment of the utility district bills dated 4/12/23 for $8,436.15.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you by Mark. Any final discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carries 4-0. Item 5 is announcements and correspondence. We have the Public Works and Utility Committee meeting on Wednesday, 4/26 at 5 PM here at the Richard Young Fire Station. And we have the Plan Commission meeting on Wednesday, 26th, also at 6:30 PM at the Richard Young Fire Station. Then the Parks Committee meeting will be Wednesday, May 10th at 5 PM at the Village Hall, followed by the next Village Board meeting here at 6:30. Any other announcements or correspondence anyone has? All right. Then we have the 2023 audit report from Wendy.
The final town of Lisbon.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Wendy Unger, partner with Baker Tilly, going to present both the final town audit for 2022 and then also the audit report for Lisbon Sanitary District. We're going to start with the town's document. You should have in your board packets both the audited statement, a communication document, and a presentation. A couple page handout for each of those that I will use to go through those other documents at a very high level. Please feel free to ask any questions. Going to again try to keep this at a relatively high level, but happy to answer any questions you may have. So starting with the town, now the village's financial statements. The documents that have been issued are for 2022. The objective of the audit was to issue an opinion on the financial statements for the town. Included in your audited statements is our audit opinion. It is a clean, unmodified opinion, highest level of assurance that you can obtain from us as your auditors. So that's a very positive scenario. Those are the type of opinions that you've received in the past. That unmodified opinion means that the financial information contained within your audited statements is believed to be materially accurate. All disclosures that are required to be included have been, and that accounting principles have been consistently applied from year to year. Again, a very positive result from an audit opinion standpoint. I'm moving on to the next page of the handout is some very high level summary financial information. Again, I'm going to hit a couple of high points with this. Probably spend the most time on your general fund, which is the first column there. I will give you some page references because a lot of this information is in your audited booklets in much more detail. And you can look at that at your leisure. But on the general fund column there, this is found on page 41 of your audited statements. When we look at your general fund activity, which is your day-to-day operating fund, really accounts for most of the activity of the town. We look at that in comparison with budget. You had actual revenue of 7.7 million, almost 7.8 million, compared to a slightly over a $6 million budget. So you ended very favorable in your revenue category, $1.65 million over budget. Again, very favorable. Several different reasons for that. You had the land sale, the lot sale, so that was $1 million, along with some highway vehicles that were also sold. So again, $1 million over budget there. Your building permit revenue was $130,000 over budget. Your ambulance revenue was $140,000 over budget. Your interest income did very well, $120,000 over budget. And then you had also transferred in some money from your ARPA fund of roughly $57,000. So again, those items in combination result in that overage. In your expenditure category, 6.3 million of expenses compared to a $6.1 million budget. So you did come in a little bit over budget in your expense categories, but main reason for that, you were roughly $182,000 over, but when you obtain or receive more building permit revenue, your building inspection fees go up. So they went up by roughly $120,000. So a good portion of that overage is related to them. But again, you had the offsetting revenue. So overall, when you put together your 2022 budget, you budgeted to break even, add nothing to fund balance. Actually, for 2022, you added 1.4 million, almost 1.5 million to your general fund, ending the year at 6.1 million of fund balance. There's a couple components to that, as I've summarized in the table below. Almost 1.3 million is what's referred to as non-spendable. There's a small portion of that that's prepaid, but the remaining non-spendable portion is the deficit fund balance that currently exists in your TID. So that the general fund essentially covers that until the TID starts to generate enough increment to become positive, and we'll talk about that in a moment. There's a little bit of assigned fund balance of 24,000, but your unassigned fund balance, which is your contingency, your working capital, your rainy day, 4.8, almost 4.9 million, equates to roughly 79% of your operating budget. So a very strong financial position in your general fund affords you some flexibility in utilizing those funds for one-time purchases or whatever management and the board deems appropriate. Moving on to the next column, this is your ARPA fund, $113,000 of revenue. You spent $113,000 of it. That fund had zero fund balance, which it is required to have. You have sitting though on your balance sheet, you received almost another $1 million that is sitting on your balance sheet until you spend it. So as you spend that in 23 and 24, that money will get recognized as revenue along with the expenses, and eventually that'll go to zero. But again, that's why that number looks relatively small in comparison to what you did receive. Debt service fund, $1.7 million of revenue. Most of that is taxes. You levy taxes to pay your principal and interest on town debt. A small portion of that is from the sale of the dance studio, 152,000. So again, 1.6 million of revenue. You spent 700. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm on the next column. Spent a little bit over 2 million on principal and interest on town debt. Ended the year at $27,000 of fund balance. The fund balance is restricted, can only be used for debt service purposes. So you can either use that to offset a future levy, pay something ahead of time, whatever, again, you deem appropriate. The next column is your capital project fund. This fund had $1.6 million of revenue. Keep in mind, you borrowed some money during 2022, so 520,000 of that is borrowed money. You have money that comes into that fund from your other funds. So you budget in your general fund to put money aside for additional equipment purchases in the future. So 485,000 of transfers come in from your general fund. There was also roughly $145,000 of donations in that fund. You spent $700,000 on park and highway equipment, adding $878,000 to fund balance and ending the year at $2.5 million of fund balance. Those monies are committed. They're committed for the purpose of that fund. So they can only be used for capital purchases. If any of that money was to be used elsewhere, it would require board action to move that. Your TID fund, I mentioned previously, $194,000 of revenue. Most of that is a CDBG grant, 170,000 of that, a small portion of that is increment. The TID is generating roughly $18,000 of increment. And again, as development continues, you will see an increase in that. You spent $900,000 during 2022. Most of that's within your engineering category for the Biz Park, East Road and Hamilton School water main move. So that deficit that was previously in that fund of roughly 525,000 grew a little bit by 707,000 and is now at 1.2 million of deficit. Not unusual for a TID in its early stages. The last column, again, not going to go through this in detail, is found on page 45. These are the remaining governmental funds. So your library fund, your park fund, your building fund, your fire operations fund, compost. Also includes the new Lisbon Quarry Fund is included in there, and then your sewer study fund. Most of the activity within that non-major column, which can be found on page 45 of your audited statements, is within that Lisbon Quarry Fund. They gave Land and Stone gave $475,000 for future water infrastructure around the quarries. So that is sitting in there as one of the larger figures. Moving to the next page, then the last fund of the town is your stormwater fund. So this had operating revenue of $246,000, very comparable to prior year. This is a business type fund. So we look at this really in comparison to prior year, not in comparison to any type of budget. $198,000 of expenses. That was up a little bit over the previous year. Some additional costs in the engineering category. You had some very small capital contributions, which was a small state grant of $335. And then ARPA money was also put in this fund, a little bit over $2,000. So overall, the stormwater fund added $50,000 to its net position, ended the year at 1.6 million. Of that net position, 427,000 is cash, which is up roughly $60,000 from the previous year. So the stormwater fund is generating enough income from customers to increase cash, pay its bills. One thing I just want to note, that if you are somebody that compares numbers from year to year, that addition to net position is down significantly over the previous year. Last year it was roughly $540,000. But keep in mind, in 2021, you had the capital contribution of the Highway F extension project. So that comes in as a revenue. So just want to mention that in case you were looking into that. Lastly, on the next page, as part of the audit process, we do issue a reporting and insights document, and you have those in hand for both the town and the sanitary district. Very similar content for a majority of the documents, but just a couple things to note on the town's document. Included in there, we have a section where we are required to communicate any material weaknesses that exist within an organization's internal control structure. Included in the town's report, we do have a material weakness related to financial statement processing, but that is only because we as your auditors become part of your internal control structure, because we prepare your audited statements. We prepare the actual statements. So for a very brief point in time, we become part of it. But very happy to say also segregation of duty comments have been eliminated. The town and administration have worked very hard to implement proper controls so that there is not a segregation of duties within the various transaction cycles, which is very positive and takes some time and effort to get there. So I commend you on that. That's not something we see typically in organizations the size of the town, now the village. Also included in that document, new governmental accounting standards that are coming down the pipeline. There's one that the village will need to consider, that's GASB 96, very similar to the lease standard that we implemented this past year, but again, had no material impact. And we'll work with Kathy and her team to make sure that you're ready to do that, assuming it's of any type of material nature. It's the accounting for subscription-based IT arrangements. So again, like GIS systems or SCADA systems, those are, some of the more popular items. The remaining portion of that document is just really our communication to you as the board, nothing unusual or unexpected in that portion of the report. On the very last page of my handout, I include my phone number and my email address. I go through this very quickly, but I am very happy to talk with any of you about the content of the reports, what we do, what we don't do, and answer any questions you may have. But at this point, before I switch to the sanitary district, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the town. Of the village.
Any questions from the board? No?
I just got one comment, couple of comments. Just thanks to staff, admin and officers, it's always lost on people when people are doing their job correctly. So thanks to those group of people for doing a good job, because I'm happy to say that we're in a great financial position as a town, now village. So that should something out of the ordinary come along, we're prepared for it. And also too, this is still navigating out of the crazinesses that are associated with COVID. We don't need to talk about how much plow trucks and ambulances and just general cost for services went through the roof. But thanks to everyone for doing that.
All right, then shifting gears quickly, again, you should have hard copies of the Lisbon Sanitary District financial statements and reporting and insights document. Things that I've explained in a little bit more detail on the town side. I am not going to spend any more time on that within the sanitary district. I will just quickly note what type of opinion in that. You do have a handout for the sanitary district also in your packets. Like the town, the sanitary district also receives a clean, unmodified opinion. Again, noting the materiality of the information is believed to be materially correct. All of the same comments I would make regarding that. So again, positive opinion issued for the sanitary district. Unlike the town, there's only one fund per se for the sanitary district. So the information I have to share related to financial highlights is much shorter. Just want to note a couple different things. Overall, total revenue for the sanitary district for 2022 was $451,000. Most of that, as you would expect, are charges to your customers. That's roughly $390,000 of that. You do levy a tax, or they levy a tax. Now you levy a tax. That is $50,000. There was some additional investment income of $11,000. So overall total $451,000 of revenue. Operating expenses, $427,000. That's up roughly $100,000 over the previous year. A couple of the larger reasons are treatment costs were $35,000 more than the previous year, and repair and maintenance costs were up $45,000, and that's related to grinder pump issues and the pressure main with Richmond School. So some additional work that was done in 2022 that wasn't in 2021. So overall, the sanitary added $23,000 to its net position. That compares to $118,000 in the previous year. Ended the year at $3.6 million of net position. I've broken out underneath that the various components of that. Most of that net position is infrastructure. It's the pipes in the ground. There is money that's been set aside for the equipment replacement fund, that's $427,000, and then the remaining portion is unrestricted in that position. Similar to the town, also issued the reporting and insights. Again, nothing I need to draw to your attention there, except for the fact they also have a material weakness related to segregation of duties, not the financial prep. Mike has prepared the financials and footnotes for us, so they don't have a material weakness related to that. But because Mike does all the work, there is a segregation of duties issue related to the sanitary district. Now, with that coming into the town, wouldn't expect to necessarily have that because you do have segregation and should allow for the appropriate level of control in a multi-individual organization. Again, the rest of that letter, though, is very normal and customary. Last item, again, on the last page of the handout, once again, I've included my phone number, my email information. I do believe I am presenting this report to an additional group of people at some point this month, so I will note that. But again, any questions regarding the sanitary district?
Anything from the board?
No.
Nope. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Wendy. We'll then move on to the Lake Country Municipal Court report. Judge Kay.
Village President, for allowing me to appear and the administration for getting me on the calendar. You have extra copies of my annual letter. I don't know if you have copies already, but I bring you extra copies. Kind of gives an annual State of the Union, State of the Court summary of what has happened our past year. Things are going well. Some highlights from my annual letter. Our municipal court collected over $2.2 million in fines. From that, the court retains approximately $399,000 for its operating budget. The rest go to the county, the state, and to the municipalities such as yourself for fine revenue. I think last year, according to our unaudited reports, I think now the village received $109,000 in fine revenue last year from our court. When we do our budgets, we always try to do a net zero type kind of a budget. So I'm proud to report that this year, based upon several factors, our surplus was $50,000. If you take into consideration less expenditures, we had an overall surplus of about $79,000. One of the big factors is because we have increased citations. We're now very well past COVID. During the COVID period, a lot of the captains and chiefs told their officers, slow down on the speeders and worry about the felons and necessary services. And they wanted to kind of cut back on the contact with people. So now we're well past that. So things are back up to our regular caseload. Secondly, about a year and a half ago, we joined SDC, State Department of Collections, and they are a division of the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. They are the government, they're the big boys. And so they have the ability to, for payers who, or people who have not paid, you can go into their checking savings account. For the kids that come to court, I tell them a debit card because they don't get checking accounts. Or they can go to your tax returns, get your refunds, intercept that, and send it to our court. Last year, we collected approximately $178,000 of old debt. We even had one citation, 1988, which is the year our court formed, and they went back and intercepted funds from that gentleman's checking account. He was mad or heck, he thought after 40 years he'd get a pass, and no, so we got that got those funds. Point is, last page of my handout is a pie chart that shows the depiction of what happens to money that comes in. So for a typical fine of $124, a typical speeding citation, 40% of it goes to your municipality. The state always gets its cut because they allow us to exist, so we get their 25%. Sheriff Saracen, he gets 8% to run his jail, and we do send people to the jail. And Lake Country Municipal Court retains 27% of that for our budget. So you probably already had the opportunity to approve of our budget. We don't ask the municipalities to throw any money in, which is very rare. Most other municipal courts throughout the state usually come back to their governing body and says, we need extra money to help run our court. We do not. So it's basically you use the court, you pay for it, and that's, I think, a good thing. So we plan on continuing with that trend. New courthouse has been, we're well established, we moved in. Things are going great. We have space for the clerks. I don't remember our old space at the city hall. We were jammed into a room, 4 clerks, myself. The space between about here to that wall and not as far as that wall. It was really tight. So now we have room to grow, lots of space. So eventually, as the court grows, we can get a 5th clerk, a 6th clerk, whatever. We're all set up for the future. So we still have 2 full-time clerks, 2 part-time clerks. Some good news is that we are hearing some discussions about other municipalities who may want to join our court, which is fine. Special shout out to our chief, Don Weimer, who does all of our administrative committee work, our budget, and also our police chiefs and captains who participate on our monthly operations meeting. So monthly, we have chairperson, Captain Lisa Panis there, Chief Pfister from the city, Chief Mike Harden from the Village of Summit, Torrin Misko from Village of Harlan, and Dan Newmeyer from Shaniqua. We met again this morning and just discussed common issues that might come up, a change in the procedure. Some pre-trials are telephonic, some of the guys wanted in person. Even though we're very uniform with 20 different jurisdictions that go in our court, there's always some unique, peculiar thing. Is I'm sure you're aware of this running a municipality. There's all kinds of goofy things. We do have a new website. I did not do anything on that because I am computer illiterate, but go check it out. It's pretty nice and has some forms on there, basic answers, basic questions, link to the DOT, so they can, get information about their occupational licenses and things like that. And all those things are good. Thanks for letting me hear here. And any questions, please feel free to ask me. If you have any hard questions, call my clerk, Teresa. She knows it pretty good. And
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I had one. So now that we're using SDC, where does the 178,000 of old debt go to? Is it back to each individual municipality or is it
yes,
back to the general fund of the court?
no, yes, sir. It belongs to whoever wrote those tickets. So part of that was probably old town of Lisbon debt. So when that comes in, we spread it, my clerk spread it the same way that pie chart is. So if it's an old Lisbon ticket from 20 years ago, it comes in. You guys get your 40% and things like that. So everybody's revenue, all the municipalities has gone up. I don't remember what yours was last year, but it gets up slightly. And you have a lot of those overweight tickets, that's a big revenue maker. So. Right, so it's things are going well. One last thing, because we joined SDC, I've cut way back on the issuance of my warrants. So in the old days, the only way to enforce payment was either suspend a person's license or do a warrant or send it to collections. In the old collection companies, they just weren't that good. They would kind of go for the easy big ones, but they wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. SDC, I mean, they're the Department of Revenue, they've got people's social security number, their jobs, it's almost scary how much information they have. And that's just how it works. So because we, on serious cases, I still do warrants. And those are for the OWIs, truck drivers, repeat OAS people operating after suspension. My policy is after 3 such tickets, then I do a warrant. We have numerous people that have 18, 19, 20 suspensions. Most judges just keep on resuspending, because hate to say it, most judges are just pretty liberal. And they just don't get it, so I kind of want to cut that circle of nothingness. And I guess every Friday in court, they're picked up, the deputies are pretty good at picking them up. They got in the back seats and they got them hooked up, but not too tight, so they can get their phone and they're calling their mommies and their girlfriends. Why don't you go to the jail? They get the money and they post and things are doing good. So just for disobedience officers, obstructing justice, OWIs, operating under suspensions, and the repeat hot marijuana violations. So in your budget, you probably have a line item for jail incarceration that should be down. I don't know how much down, but see Kathy shaking her head, so it's down. Oh,
Any other questions? Thank you for coming out.
thank you. And one last thing, because your village, not change every single one of our forms and change town for the village. Congratulations.
Thank you. All right, item 8, administrator report.
So we are continuing to have drainage issues on the property at Plainview. Had the engineer take a look at the plans. They found that they are in compliance, the plans are in compliance. The issue is that the pond is not complete. And it's right now acting as a sediment pond, so all the sediment is coming in, so it can't fill up with the water, and then the water drains out. The county will not allow Mr. Gudix to complete the pond until the exterior of his building is complete and he can do his final grading. We have contacted the county to see if we could get that pushed up. We couldn't. Mr. Gudix is expecting to finish his exterior of his property this spring, so hopefully that drainage issue will go away, but I wanted to keep you updated on that. We worked and completed the RFP for the basketball court. We're going to be talking about that later today. Worked on getting quotes up for a computer system. Again, we'll discuss that tonight. We started working on the 5-year capital improvement plan, discussed with each of our department heads on what they can see in the next 5 years, the type of equipment they might be in need of. Started a comparison of the health insurance with the state health insurance plan. I wanted to alert you that our interfacility revenues are down from first quarter 22. We brought in $96,000. First quarter 23, we brought in $40,000. More than half. More than 50% less we're collecting right now. Now, it does fluctuate throughout the year, but comparing first year 22 and first year 23, our interfacilities is down quite a bit. We received a workman's comp dividend of $3,800. Letters were sent to all the property owners on Hillside to alert them that they're going to see more trucks going down their road to Good Hope, just so they're not calling and alerting us to the trucks. We kind of sent the letter ahead of time to let them know that was happening. This will happen until the roundabout at Q is completed and the road is open. Then we'll go back to the weight limits. We sent letters out to the property owners that had split zoning between the shoreline, the shoreline and the village. We had our first open house last night. We had 27 property owners come in and talk to our planners about their split and what they prefer it to look like. It's kind of a heads up, so when we do the shoreline, we're not surprising any of our property owners. I have so we did 27 property owners. I sent out 166 letters. 27 people showed up last night. We have an open house again tomorrow during the day. So we expect to see people come in at that time, and I fielded about 10 property owners concerns on the same subject. That's my report.
Any questions for Kathy? Thank you, Kathy. Item 9 is Public Works and Utility Committee referrals. We have a discussion and necessary action regarding resolution 2023-02, adopting amendment to the Sussex Lisbon Sanitary Sewer Service Area to include property located at North 71 West 22339 Good Hope Road. So the committee recommended 5-0.
Yeah, we recommended it at 5-0. And there was no comments in opposition to doing it. Everybody supported it and the committee recommended approval on 5-0.
Comments or questions from the board? Anything else from staff? Is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution 2023-02, adopting an amendment to the Sussex Lisbon Sanitary Sewer Service Area to include property located at N71 W22339 Good Hope Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Paula, any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We have item 10, Parks Committee referrals. We have discussion and necessary action on the recommendation to award the bid for Lisbon Oak basketball court.
Yeah, so we did discuss this in our Parks meeting just before this, and we did want to bring it up to the board. So the total amount of the project did go up a little bit since we started this to $450. So we would have an increase of $6,450, and we were hoping to get that amount from the ARPA fund to cover that and complete that basketball park project.
Questions?
The vote was 7-0. to move
Yeah,
forward.
it was a unanimous vote. Yeah.
I would support that. I think the ARPA would be a proper use of the funds. And we have enough in our account to cover it without any problems.
Becky,
No,
I agree. Using ARPA funds and everything's going up. Not much you can do about it at this point. All right, anything else from staff on this?
no. Ask for your approval.
Is there a motion on this item?
I'd make a motion to approve the use of $6,450 of ARPA money to complete the basketball project at Lisbon Oaks Park.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, motion made and seconded. Is there any other discussion?
We're going to award it to. We should probably put in the.
Oh, Munson, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just want to actually do the award. So
Yeah.
It's the award of the bid. Munson of 61,000.
Yep. I didn't have that piece with me. Thank you for, yep.
So it's a 61,000 even
61,450.
450.
Yeah.
The motion's good with that. And the second,
Yes.
any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. All right, Plan Commission referrals. Discussion and necessary action on the request by David and Nicole Berg to rezone the eastern half of the property located at North 71 West 22371 Good Hope Road, LSPT 0237.978 from County Shoreline M2 General Industrial District to County Shoreline R1 Suburban Single Family Residential District.
So this went to Plan Commission. It was a unanimous vote to approve this rezone. I ask for your approval.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. President, just noting that Attorney Macy has reviewed the ordinance and it's been amended per his suggestions. So you should have that with your packets as well. We did not receive the final document until today.
What was the notable changes?
Adding additional wording on the to include the specifics regarding shoreland.
It's technical.
Yeah, it's technical.
Any questions from the board on that?
That was on the ordinance.
Yes, yep.
Nothing from anyone else? I would then make the motion to approve the rezone of the eastern half of the property located at North 71 West 22371 Good Hope Road, LSBT 0237.978 from County Shoreline M2 General Industrial District to County Shoreline R1 Suburban Single Family Residential. Is there a second?
Second, ladies first.
Second by Becky. Any final discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item B, discussion and necessary action on the request by applicant owners Ron Heppas and Bruce Hassler, H&H Auto, for approval of a 2-lot certified survey map and any applicable waivers as necessary for the properties located adjacent to County Road F, known as LSBT 0248.983, LSBT 0248.983.001, and LSBT 0248.976.
Again, this was brought up at the plan commission meeting and it was approved unanimously. We ask for your approval.
Questions or comments from the board? Is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion that we approve the request by Ron Heppas and Bruce Hassler of H&H Auto for the approval of a 2-lot certified survey map and any equitable waivers as necessary for the properties located adjacent to County Road F and known as LSBT 0248.983, LSBT 0248.983.001, and LSBT 024976.
0248.976. Any, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any final discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. All right, item 12, new business. A, discussion necessary action regarding request by Ron Torn for an extension on his non-compliant property located at North 72 West 22484 Good Hope Road. We have Ron here tonight.
In your package, you have a request for consideration. Mr. Torn has requested an extension to May. Is it May 8th to remove the fence. So he is here today to make his request.
You want to step on up, Ron? All right. I guess the first question we have is the existing structure that's up right now. The
Steel frame building.
yeah, it's still up.
Yes,
Is it coming down soon?
yes, well, since the weather got better, yes.
Can you, as far as the extension to May 8th, what the reasoning is for that,
For me, for
for the
the
fence?
unit, to take what, the fence down?
Yeah. You
I-
just,
I gotta figure out why I need to take that down, because I don't like somebody looking out their bedroom window and, over at my property when I have granddaughters out in the backyard on the swing set and the slide and the trampoline.
says you're gonna plant some trees by the fence.
Yes, I will when I get a chance to.
That's the reason for the extension request on the
Extension, yeah.
fence, was to keep
The only thing is I got pipe in the ground there, so I don't know how that's gonna work.
Okay. Questions from the board? Paula, anything?
No, thanks.
Mark?
So what all needs to still be removed?
There's a sunscreen above the fence. So he can't look out his bedroom window and see what's going on in my property. Because there's no reason for him to worry about what's going on my property. Which is Bob Gall. He needs to mind his own business.
Just for clarification, is that the metal structure that's on
There's
top
a
of the
metal structure and it's got a sunscreen that the metal structure is being held to hold the sunscreen up.
So the fence is legal. It
Fence
just
is legal and there's a 2-foot sunscreen above that.
2 foot,
2 foot.
2 foot metal partition that goes across that then he put,
That was
Screen
professionally
on.
done too. It wasn't something just
right,
just
but
put
it
up there.
makes
It
the
doesn't look
fence
bad. It looks good.
8 feet tall when our code says 6 feet.
It's 2 foot above our code.
So it's illegal.
Right. So according to the letter is requesting that the 2 foot extension of the fence remain until he can plant some 8 foot tree line behind the fence and then remove the attached shade extension that is attached to the fence. Is that? And then we obviously
That
we
the-
need to get that metal structure down ASAP. What all
Yeah.
sorry?
So we do have the building inspector here. He did write a letter. His first letter stated that he was to remove the one shed that he has without permit, and then the second partially built shed, that's the metal structure as well. And he has not removed either one of those two structures at this point.
So there's 3 sheds technically?
He has 3 sheds. One is 1,000 feet, 1,000 square feet.
700 square.
Oh,
feet.
the garage, okay.
The,
Well, 1,000 is the main garage with 1,000 square foot.
and that's detached,
Yes.
yes. So that's a structure. An
Mhm.
accessory structure. And then he's got the 1.5. Now, if you consider the metal piece is also another part of a shed that he has to take down. He has another shed and he's only allowed. I think the building inspector could probably answer more of these questions, but he's already over his allowed with just the 1,000 square feet. It's not supposed to have either one of the 2 sheds. And we put those up without permit.
So I can only have one building, but my neighbor can have 3 of them.
Oh, right.
How does that work?
So right now, all we're talking about is your property,
Okay,
Ron.
so I have to file a complaint to get these other buildings taken care of on somebody else's property?
Do you have to go through the process
Okay.
of review?
That's fine.
So I guess one thing that I consider, and I think it's of the nature of this board, is we're not here to be entirely punitive. It shouldn't, if we have to, we can be. Our goal is to gain compliance. Or sometimes people don't know what the rules are, and this is our opportunity to unfortunately educate, but for us, I think one thing that we consider heavily is, are we moving in the right direction to gaining compliance? And I get it, you're not out there in the middle of January trying to take down
Right.
buildings. I can have some understanding of that, but one thing that struck me was the notice date of the first letter was September 19th, 2022.
We were trying to work some
And
stuff
hold on,
out to see if we could
Hold on,
fill it.
let me
Okay.
get my point across first. So one thing I consider is you were noticed by our building inspector of what needed to be taken care of, and for me, I need to know, have we been moving forward with gaining compliance to what he had recommended? So that's where I come from, as a place of compassion, understanding,
Mhm.
move towards compliance.
The shed, or I guess I don't even know what to call it, just it's a shell essentially at this point,
It's
not
just
even
a
really a
metal
shell.
frame,
It's-
it's a metal frame structure that's up right now. There's no building being done on it or anything like that. It is coming down.
So actually, Brian, if you wouldn't wanna. Actually, I can ask you to run. So the other shed that's on the property, was that put up before or after the garage?
It's a shelter.
The blue one, I think. Is that
No,
blue?
that's been up there when I moved in. That was there before I,
So that was there before you moved in, then you got a permit to put the garage up.
1,000 foot square garage.
So that was up then, and then,
Yep.
so the only structure that's been added since then was the beginning of this metal structure.
Yes,
Okay. So I guess, Brian, the other shed that's there, that is also not in compliance at this point?
Right, the shed that he's saying is 1,000 square feet. That was permitted in 2009.
Mhm.
Back then, all sheds were defined. And it was a 1,000 square foot project across all of the company. So that's private work. Any addition of that would be not compliant because he's already old, so I don't know if that's considered even not conforming or not. But he was legal at the time, so he's going to file it. Now, the one that he stated is, I don't have a record of it, really, and he said it's there when he was in. I have no way to prove it, this is that, I like this one back, but then I find it. But I don't know if that answers the question.
I'm just looking at the picture here. I think this is from Mr. Gall. I mean, it doesn't look, at the bottom of the door is actually starting to rot away, so I'm assuming this has been there for a while. So what's really in question here at this time is just the metal structure and the fence for tonight. That's what we're discussing.
He's got a temporary, you said he had a temporary shed as well.
yeah, there's a,
Structure that I didn't notice until I was out there last week. Thursday. Temporary structures are, according to our ordinance, are supposed to be permanent as well. This is a spot in the temporary structure, will follow the same way as the rest of the set structure. That's not word for word, but I just put that note in there, just so that, you know, I consider it temporary structure, this block. Just, you know, that. He's not supposed to have that either.
The tent,
Yeah. I would say, so, just guessing, I would say it's approximately 8 by 8 feet. Approximately 7 feet tall.
our ordinance doesn't allow tents.
It's,
Frank?
one of those shelters that you can buy at like the hard state line.
Uh-huh.
And like brand new, but,
It's floating.
is it- yeah,
there's no floor or nothing in it.
okay, so
It's just like stakes following the ground like a tent basically.
I mean, it's first I see it in the picture here. There's a picture of it.
Is it like one of those shelter logic?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's it.
I was right for once.
Where did you go?
Power of Google.
All right, so. As far as. I mean, just to be clear, so the ones we're discussing tonight, that we have on the agenda tonight is the shelter or the steel structure that was gonna be a shed that,
And
Was never
removal of
finished.
The
and removal of the sunscreen.
2 feet of
Sure.
metal structure.
So those are the two items we have on the agenda tonight. So, Mark, did you have
That's
anything else?
Yeah, I mean, is there, I guess I'll ask, the property owner, is there anything that's preventing you from doing it that we are not aware of? Like, it's gonna take mechanicals on
Well,
site to
it's,
get
it's
them.
up in the air. I need more than one person to do it and stuff. And I work 7 days a week. I don't know. You know, get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get back in the house at 6 o'clock at night. It's,
So if the board was to grant the extension until your requested date, I'm sure they're not gonna grant another one.
Yeah,
even if it
that's
were to be
fine.
granted. So the property would assuming it was granted, it would have to come into compliance for the fence portion by said date, whether the trees are there or not.
The metal structure.
In the metal structure, I mean, that's technically should have been down already, so I guess we need
Well,
to
what do
know.
you suggest I do then? So I don't have to, I don't want to see the man anymore. I
No,
wanna
the metal
see him.
structure, the.
Yeah, okay, the screen. I don't want to see him. I don't want to ever talk to him. I don't want to.
I'm talking about the shed.
fence.
the
I'm
beginning
talking
of it.
about the fence. That's my biggest thing. That's why I put it up. It makes me sick to look at him because I lived there for 21 years and I couldn't have done more for a person in my life for anybody else that I know. Him and his wife.
Mhm.
And for me to sit here right now, it's burning me up. I'll tell you that right now. I have no use for him at all. And what he said before about any of this stuff, anybody wants to test my soil or do anything like that, they can come anytime they want and do it because there's not a drop of oil in there. I'll tell you where the oil came from when he had his tree service guys on my property cutting their stuff down and we had a shredder and all that stuff leaking oil on my property. That's where the oil came from, if he wants to talk about oil. He was at my house almost every day. I mean, it never changed. Every day he was knocking on my door and he wanted to borrow something or wanted a hand for doing something else or whatever. And here I sit with this. Best thing he can do is pound a for sale sign in his front yard.
Mr. Torn, I'll go back to your February 14th, 2023 letter. You asked for a 60-day extension until May 8th. Is that something you can comply with? Or
Yes,
just looking at the
absolutely.
date of our next board meeting, which would be the 10th, that's not gonna allow enough time for inspection and preparation of the packet, would it? Did he have till May
If
8th?
he gets it done by May eighth, he can go out on May 9th and get it done and we can send you out information.
I mean, technically, it wouldn't even,
Because if it's
if
done,
it
it
wasn't in
wouldn't come to the board.
compliance, it would end on that date.
Right, I just don't want it to, because then we would be looking at July realistically to.
But if he doesn't comply May eighth, then it goes to site.
Yeah, that's true.
Citation.
That's our process.
It wouldn't necessarily come back to us.
Right.
In
Unless
fact,
he,
it
unless
wouldn't.
he asks for another extension.
Right, and it would not come back unless he asks for.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my position would be, he asked for it, he says May 8th is his date, I would see that as, that's his word.
Paula,
I would give him till May 8th.
Becky,
I would also give them to the 8th.
but yeah, any other,
Well, I was with the understanding that that's the final,
that's it.
yeah, that's it. Until that May 8th.
Does anyone want to put that in a motion?
I can do that. I'll make a motion to approve an extension until May 8th, 2023 regarding the request by Ron Torn for an extension on his non-compliant property located at N72W22484 Good Hope Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Becky. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries forward. Thank you. All right. Item B, discussion necessary action regarding Wisconsin Towns Association 2023-2024 dues.
So I brought this forward as we are now a village. I wasn't sure if the board would like to continue with the Towns Association fees or not. So I brought it to you to find out the direction you'd like. It's $1,420.
So there are some villages that do remain in the Towns Association.
The meetings are during our meetings, so we would not be able to go to the meetings, but if you're finding that the Towns Association magazine helps you look at things, or if you have contacted the Towns Association to help out, we are automatically members of the League of Municipalities, and our first year is free with them to be a member of the association.
Works keep coming.
Does that include the municipality magazine?
Yep. So is there a lot of overlap between the two, or would be,
Well, I think the Towns Association, they primarily do things for towns, but they do, towns are usually a smaller municipality and you're talking to other municipalities that are that small, around our size or smaller. When you're dealing with the league, a lot of times you're dealing with, something like Waukesha, Brookfield, Menominee Falls, and some of their concerns are not the same concerns that we are dealing with. We might lean toward the towns at this, in this juncture of our, of us being a village, but it's up to you if you feel that you want to move forward on it. I'm fine to put it in through AP. If not, you can sit it out a year and see if we're missing.
The village of Merton is still a member, and I think there's 3 other villages.
Both the village of Waukesha and the village of Vernon are no longer,
They pulled out.
they've pulled out.
Okay.
They did like a year and then they pulled out.
how much have you utilized it in the past?
I would go to represent our municipality every meeting but now we can't because we changed it there on Wednesday nights. So once every quarter we had a meeting and I would go to them for that, but otherwise, and we looked through their magazines if there was something on opinions. That's about it. That's all I used it for. I never really called them for anything. They did an excellent job of getting the town's transportation funds. And we did fall into that while we were a town, but if they lobby and do the work for towns to get more transportation money, or that it's not going to benefit us as a village.
Yeah, there's certain, they're lawyers and such that we had access to.
Yeah.
I'm sure they know things about village, but that's not their.
Yeah.
Primary function. They were a good asset for a number of years, there's no doubt about it. I know Sharon would love us to stay in it,
She would.
but it's a matter of what the board feels. Becky, any feelings on it?
I will say that I have used them, I have called them, I read my magazine. Maybe we should stay in for one more year and see if it's worth it.
So we have no league fees this year.
No.
But that would start next year.
Right.
So we could stay in it one more year and see how things, if we use it, we don't use it.
Yeah.
I don't know what the benefit is gonna be, but I don't know if there's not gonna be one either.
What, you know what the league fees are, just out of curiosity?
I don't off the top of my head. I haven't had to look into them yet. because
I'm
we
gonna
got so
assume
worried
it's a
about-
lot more than this.
It is
I would
definitely
think.
more. It is definitely more.
Mark, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think we can ride out the rest of the year with the WTA and I guess make a decision when we come time to budget for being in or being out next year.
Sure.
Yeah.
You feel good about that?
Yep.
All right. I don't necessarily need a motion. I just needed a direction.
All right,
Got that from the
Okay.
conversation. Thank
you
you.
have direction.
Right?
All right.
Okay.
All right, we have discussion necessary action regarding fire department cistern pump replacements.
So in front of you, you have a request for consideration for cisterns for the 2 fire stations. Our pumps do not work in either of the stations. The pump are actually inside a tank. So you have to get somebody to go into the tank to look at the pump, actually physically go into the tank, and They had a very difficult time finding a person that would be willing to do this, a company that would do this because of the safety issues. You know, it's dark in there and they have to go into, we pull all the water out of it and, you know, and drain it, but then they still have to go in to a confined, location. So we did find somebody that did that, that was willing to go in, take a look at our pumps, see what, was wrong with them. Our Richmond pump, cost was $29,807 for a replacement, and the Good Hope was $14,165. The Richmond pump actually takes care of our sprinkler system over there as well. So when the pump's not working, we don't have sprinkler system. When we don't have pumps, we are using our using water from Sussex and buying water from Sussex. So I wanted to bring this forward. It was brought up by some of our members, our fire members, that they were concerned about the fact that we didn't have working pumps. So this was this information was put together by the fire department, and they were unable to come for the discussion today. So they requested at the very least that you consider the Richmond if you were not willing to consider both pumps.
I talked with them extensively last night about this.
Mhm. Thank you.
The pump at Richmond we need to do that one. There's actually two pumps, and there's one pump that's a high volume pump to fill our tankers, and then there's a second pump that runs the sprinkler system for the building. So it's actually two pumps there that are inactive at the moment. So I believe we definitely need to do those. I am leaning towards not doing the Good Hope one at this time. The tank still fills and they can still draft on the tank so that we can park an engine there if need be. And the engine could fill up a tanker. So it's not that the tank is useless, it's just, it doesn't have the high volume pump. So basically a tanker can't just pull up, hook up, flip a switch and it fills. We would do our normal drafting style operation from that tank. That's what would be happening there.
This might be a silly question, but if we're gonna replace the pump, would there be any way to take them outside of the tank so we don't have to do that again?
There's submersible pumps to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure there's always a way to retrofit things to.
Well, I mean,
change it.
is the reason that the cost is so high because it's such a specialized thing?
Some of it is the fact that the pumps are just really expensive. I think the one pump is over $10,000. Once they broke it down in here, they actually gave me more of a breakdown when I talked to them. I mean, one of the pumps is all of like $10,000. I know Mike can attest to some of the costs of some of our pumps that we have in our lift stations being very, very expensive. So you got two pumps there plus specialized labor to replace it. I think there's some electrical issues as well in there.
Would it be worth even just looking into or asking the question to see if it would be, I don't know, feasible and if we want to make it the maintenance cheaper?
Probably could. I would really like to get that sprinkler system up and going. I would say
Well,
that.
I'd say that's kind of important.
And those didn't go at the same time. I mean, the one pump has been down quite a while, but the other one, to my knowledge, has not been. But there's been on and off electrical issues there probably since that station was built,
Mm.
to be honest. We had a lot of people that knew how to hit the hammer here and move this and do that, kept everything going, but if people no longer are here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know the answer to that though. I know there are pumps you'd have to place the pump in the building. That couldn't be outside because in winter it would freeze.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not worth it. I don't know, just throw it out there.
So I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't know how it would work, because you'd have to repipe it into the building. And then pipe it back out of the building somehow. I'm feeling it's gonna be a lot more than what we're paying right now, but in the future it might cut back, but.
Well, I mean, if it needs to get done, I think it's an issue that it has to get done.
It's nothing to say we couldn't hold off until another month on the one, but you kind of gotta do both of these at the same time, I'm assuming. Otherwise the
They're
cost
going
would
in.
go up. Yeah,
He didn't say that, but
Mark, how do you feel?
I guess I would ask, do you think that the price is going to substantially go down or reason for holding off on it?
Well, I think we have to do them. Oh, you mean between Good Hope and
Yeah.
Richmond? I just don't think we need it. We're not even 100% sure that that's always gonna be a fire station, and the DPW doesn't need a high volume pump over there.
Yeah, I think that would substantially lower the proposal. Kathy, I was wondering if, because it is over the 25,000,
we have to go
if we
through
have to
the,
do competitive bidding process.
we do. But I talked to Macy about it. Chances are this is gonna be a sole source. Because nobody else would even look at the document, so we would have to go out as a sole source. Do a bid on it, and this one is the only one that's gonna come in.
I know
Because the specialized,
It's so specialized, no one wants to go down underground in a area that is confined.
I mean, the tank itself is fairly large, but it's still confined.
I think.
We have these tanks throughout the column and none of them have pumps in them. So subdivisions put these in, they, some of them cement, I'm not sure what they're all made out of, but these were put in different areas of the village, excuse me, I gotta stop saying column, you're gonna have a quarter jar here. We're gonna be rich. They were placed in different subdivision areas, were placed, those we have to also grab. Obviously not addressing the bid portion of this. I do know that they had a half of a time finding somebody that it was each willing to do this, but I mean, whatever legal ways we have to go to do this, obviously we need to.
Yeah, and I think we could comply. It's not that we're skirting the bidding process by breaking it apart, but we're choosing not to fix one, which would then put our project on.
Yeah.
Which might be below the 25,000.
I think, well, the one is gonna be 29 and the other one's gonna be 14.
We'll try to work to get that down to under 25. We'll try to figure out a way to get that down to 25. Or we'll have to go out and do a paperwork on a sole source.
Oh, yeah, because the 29,000 is the one you want to do.
Right?
Yeah,
But you said that was 2 pumps.
that's 2 pumps, yeah. It's the same project, though. It's, I don't know that we could necessarily, I will say that this is. I don't wanna wait 2 months to do this.
Right.
I
Absolutely.
mean, this is more, I would say more on the emergency line of trying to get things fixed, even though it wasn't necessarily brought to our attention as quickly as we'd like, but. I would still view the pump for the fire suppression system would be more of an emergency fix.
100%, okay.
The only thing is that you can't do one really without doing, you could, but I think our costs would just
Yeah.
skyrocket. I don't know what that changes. If it changes anything, I guess. Where do we go from here?
So I would say,
Where are we drafting a letter from right now?
They can draft. I don't know if they can draft out of that. I believe they can still draft out of that tank and they can draft out of the Good Hope tank, but they're not. They've actually been using fire hydrants, Sussex fire hydrants to do it. So what they draft out of that tank and then there's a well that
Right.
fills it up. Slowly over time. That fire system, the suppression system that we have in the firehouse is a dry system, so it uses air pressure, which holds back valving and. When everything is not working for a long period of time, that isn't necessarily the best for it either.
Yeah, I think that
Again, it's been down for a little while, so
good thing we haven't needed it.
that would have been embarrassing.
so can you do can you do a motion to approve the Richmond pumps at no more than 29,807 as a sole source emergency project, unless necessary, I mean, because we need to get it done. I just don't want to wait until next month to bring
Yeah,
it
I
back
don't
to you.
either.
So if we, some kind of motion, we're gonna need to move forward on the.
If that motion is sufficient, I would make that motion. I'm not sure of the legalities of it, I guess, but.
Right, but if it's not, I'm gonna go for a 25,000, gonna work on the 25,000.
I would second it.
Underneath that, so, but we need to get this moving, so if I can get it.
I just
passed
make
for
it
29.
subjected to the legality of it. You know, we don't know that we're not doing anything illegal,
Right,
but we also need to verify.
Yeah. I'd make the motion then to authorize the pumps replacement at Richmond Station for the amount not to exceed $29,807 as a sole source bid. Pending review of staff or / attorney if need be for legality of this motion. Is there a second?
Second,
Mark? Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. All right, item D, discussion and presentation regarding future computer system for Village Hall.
all right, so I do have, two gentlemen on Zoom, but I did want to just start the conversation a little bit with you. We have, had trouble, with our VMs, our computer systems that we have currently. We attach our computers to a computer that is on, in the fire department. Whenever we have a power outage or a cable situation, we are, down, and, we're down, I think last year we were down for at least 6 days without, phones, without computers, and many of the staff work from home so we could continue working. We talked about possibly bringing forward a server in-house to kind of reduce the need to go outside of the building itself, because if we lost power, it's one thing, but if the fire department loses power, we're down again. So I did go out and get a bid from our current vendor. Then I went out and reached out to 2 other vendors. The 2 other vendors had a suggestion of a different process, and they're going to kind of go through the difference between a SharePoint versus a file server, and so I've got them on Zoom today to help us understand that. So I have an idea of what direction you want us to go in. I can get you quotes for servers, but if this other direction is a better way for us to go, then I would go out and get bids for this other direction, so.
Okay.
Tyler?
Hey, thanks, Kathy. Yeah, I just want to thank the village board members for the time here just to talk a few minutes, and also the residents. I'm an account manager at OnTech Systems. We're located in Menominee Falls. It's where our office is. I came out to talk with Kathy about just services in general. I met her at the WCMA WCMA meetings in Fond du Lac, and we came out, myself and Dan, who's also on the call. He's a technical account manager with us. We were discussing just services in general, and then she mentioned the server. And Dan just kind of had another option to which we were going to present to you guys. He sent you that information with the file server and the SharePoint, and he'll kind of explain a little bit further in depth that piece of paper you have in front of you there.
Hello, everyone. Like Taylor said, my name's Dan. I've been with OnTech for 10 years now. So Taylor and I both are kind of in the account management side of things. I'm a little bit more technical. I was a technician with OnTech for 9 years prior. So have a little bit more knowledge in terms of systems and support and stuff. And when we started talking with Kathy about the needs and what what's all needed at the village, it kind of sparked in my mind to look to more of a cloud solution, which would be SharePoint as opposed to a physical, file domain controller server, which they're currently using at the fire department. I kind of threw together that sheet you have in front of you, just kind of lays out pretty basic what a file server is and what SharePoint Online are. Kind of the biggest differences between the two is one is a piece of hardware that goes on your or within your building there. There's also solutions you can do like Microsoft Azure or Amazon hosted solutions for servers as well. And the other would be SharePoint. The one of the issues I know was downtime. And so the file server in-house would take away that problem, right? So if there was an issue with internet, the files would still be accessible in-house. SharePoint integrates with Microsoft Office 365 suite. That's what's leveraged for Outlook, for your email. That's what would be leveraged for any other applications like Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint or anything that you may use that way. SharePoint is web-based, so it's essentially a document library that's hosted in Microsoft's data centers. So it is dependent on internet. If there ever was an internet outage, most companies that have kind of a high dependency on internet would either have if available, a fiber service, which if it's not available, coax is fine. But then they would also have a cost-effective like mobile wireless backup solution so that they could get by while their outage was going on there. So just kind of talking about the differences in a file server, like I said, would be in-house there. All the documents would be stored on there. Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have no other need for any other hardware to be on site there. Accounting is all in the cloud. All your payment services are in the cloud, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so there wouldn't really be server pieces can be pretty expensive in terms of just getting the chassis and the hardware. The nice thing about SharePoint is it's a monthly fee that is rolled into your cost of your Microsoft 365 product. So it's really kind of a capital expenditure versus an operating expenditure. There's not much change. There's not much support that has to go on when you utilize a service like SharePoint, which is nice. There still is setup, right? So there still is labor associated with configuring a file server, and there's labor associated with configuring SharePoint. They're pretty comparable in terms of the amount of time to set each up. So really the big difference is that capital expenditure up front, the thousands of dollars for the server itself, as opposed to SharePoint having no hardware for you to have to maintain on site or purchase up front. As you look through that document, is there anything on there that sparks any questions in your head? Anything that you see on there that you like, that you don't like, that I could answer for you?
Questions?
I'm just wondering if we are used to the G Suite, the Google Suite of stuff, Gmail and such. Is that compatible with this?
No, so G Suite and Microsoft 365 are two separate services. One is by Google, one's by Microsoft. The nice thing about Microsoft is they offer what's called GCC SKU, and that stands for Government Cloud Computing. And so government entities have certain restrictions. And as the village gets more involved and in depth with certain potential requirements and insurance requirements, the GCC coverage by Office 365 would satisfy those requirements. So we would recommend going on that government skewed platform in Office 365 as opposed to G Suite.
So with the GCC, I did some research into that. That does not appear to be a big deal.
As to what would be a big deal for, as it's compared to
In general, or just being of highly more secure. I mean, I don't see any issues with Google or Gmail at all, actually, in comparison. I did a lot of, it was a lot of forums, don't get me wrong, but I was reading through them just to learn about this. And it doesn't appear that for us, there would be a whole lot of value for that.
You know, and for you, there wouldn't, certain government entities, like if you had a police department, which I know there isn't one, there's different benefits like CGIS that would be a requirement for GCC. It would just be any government entity we would lead, you know, we're partners with both Google and Microsoft. Microsoft is a little bit more prevalent, I feel, in a lot of the municipalities that we work with currently. And so, you know, we would take the recommendation of offering a government entity, the GCC offering that they recommend, really. But we can work with anything too. It's not, we're not married to Microsoft. Some people like, you know, like Gmail and Google Docs and everything. The G Suite you're talking about uses what I just said was Google Docs, which is kind of like its document storage repository. SharePoint has the same thing. It's a document library where your documents are stored. One structures itself a little bit different than the other in terms of its security and how access is granted and the control that you have on the back end. Microsoft uses a lot of kind of takes things from its its older on-prem server technology and uses what's called like security groups to delegate access. So there's that benefit there in terms of that security. Kathy, do you have any cyber liability insurance requirements? We had discussed that. I'm trying to spark the memory in my brain that we had discussed that.
Our cyber security liability this year was over $6,000 with our current setup. So that was a lot more than what we were paying the years. Which is what made me consider if we were to go to something that maybe could reduce the number of reduce our liability, our cyber liability insurance while we're in the middle of this work. So the other thing with Google do they have, and I don't know this, so do they have right now we use Zoom.
Mhm.
And so we pay for Zoom, and then we also have a Dropbox. We pay for the Dropbox. Does Google have, I know SharePoint has, we can do like use like a Dropbox, and then they have Teams as part of the 365 software. Is that
Yeah, correct.
something that's compatible to that just in Google?
They're comparable in terms of their features. Google, Microsoft includes Teams. When you're on a platform that would include, that you would need to be on for SharePoint integration, you get certain inclusions at no extra cost, like what's called a Teams dial plan. What that gives you is the ability when you send a virtual link to someone for a message, it gives them a free number to call in on that they can then call from a phone on. You can send that up to 100 participants or more, depending on the level of service that you have with that. The other thing it uses, where you had said Dropbox, is it uses OneDrive for Business. So that's how you sync all your documents from SharePoint to your computer, is called OneDrive for Business. But then each user also gets a personal OneDrive that actually syncs all the documents on their desktop and in their My Documents, all their pictures and everything, to their personal cloud. So it's almost like a backup for the computers that's included in that as well. So, most people tend to store things on their desktops, whereas if your computer died and you don't have a backup, everything that's on that is gone if the hard drive were to die. With that inclusion of the personal OneDrive, that's all backed up. Anytime a change is made, it syncs the changes automatically to Microsoft's storage, and that stuff's protected.
So do you believe that the, a file server solution, other than it costing more for the hardware, is any more secure than the cloud-based system?
No, and it just brings another variable in for you to have to maintain and secure, right? By bringing a file in there, you have to have, things in place that will secure that server to satisfy your cyber, insurance. So by just taking that out of the equation, you're really only thing you're securing is your internet traffic, which is done by the firewall that's in place. Microsoft takes care of everything else. And then if you were to be on the GCC suite, it's securing everything that's at rest and in traffic as well.
So if we have a long-term internet outage.
Mhm.
Using the cellular option, I mean, that's what you have to have then, I'm assuming.
Ken,
What-
I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
What are the speeds associated with that? Like if we're down for a week, like a pole goes down or something. What kind of, speeds would we be anticipating from that?
Sure.
Getting
So it's
forward
really,
down a lot?
it would be on the carrier that you choose to go with. So if you have Verizon for phones and you were to go get the cellular provider uses what's called a cradle point, and that has an antenna that gets installed at the building there that then gives you your access. So there's different tiers available. Most instances, as a failover internet connection, a business would do like a 30 by 5 connection, so 30 meg download by 5 upload, which would be plenty for someone, for a business of 5, 6, 7 users to work on and get by. The benefit of SharePoint though too is, like, if there was an issue at the building, you could go to the coffee shop down the street that has internet, you could go home that has internet, and all your documents are available to you without having to connect through a VPN or anything. You can also sync the documents on your computer for offline use. So if you had to go somewhere and work on something, you'd sync it for offline use. And then when you come back to active internet, it'll sync the changes up for you automatically.
So if we were to bring in a server, we're gonna have to wire. Did we ever have a server here that
Yes.
all the computers were wired to?
Yes.
Where did the server sit?
Right behind the Lisa.
Oh.
They're not that big. No, I mean, and
The
there.
server was
They're not
right
that-
where Elisa is.
So all the
they're only
wiring.
this,
was
they're only
done.
this big.
Yeah.
They're not very large.
Yeah, they're just a big.
Yeah.
Big box.
What's the approximate cost for a server?
I can take that.
Okay.
We got a quote back from Dell on a guesstimate for the server that you would need. And it came back right about 15,000 all in with labor.
That is considerably higher than I believe what we got from our other vendor. What kind of specs are on that? What's model?
I can pull that up for you 1 second. Was that recently?
Yeah.
Moved over to the fire.
That was a rack unit. Yeah, this would just be a standalone. Assuming like a T420 or something, or. We use
It's loading right now. I'm sorry, just 1 second.
We have somebody that can maintain it.
There's company, and our current company can do that, or they could do that. I mean, I guess there's another company at play here too. Any of them could. We use these at where I have 5 of these. I'm assuming it'll be very similar to what they're about to quote. And there's really not a lot of maintenance to them.
Okay.
They've gotten a lot better over the years. Like ours, even they alert us before, like if a hard drive is starting to go out, we know it alerts us to the fact, and you run RAID or whatever it's called these days. Redundant hard drives.
Yep, very true. The only bad thing is they've just gotten significantly more expensive. But yeah, you would get a notification about the hard drive was gonna go or anything like that.
We were discussing in here, but I do have a quote from March 2nd for a Dell PowerEdge T350 server for $3,447.
I'm sorry, so the quote, when I said 15,000, that was for all the hardware that we were suggesting, not just the server. So just the server was gonna be about 2.8, about 10,000 even with labor, so.
So the
What model?
It is a Dell PowerEdge T350. That's T as in Tom.
350.
Yep, 350, and that will also include your 7 user cals for the server, and then your licensing for 3 years, the VMs, as well as the installation.
We'd still be doing virtual machines?
Yes.
Yeah, one. Yeah, one. And then just your 16 core standard license as well.
We didn't go through the bids yet. We were just trying to get an understanding if you wanted to go with the server situation, the server estimate came in at
I can give you the cost for the SharePoint migration estimate as well, if you'd like.
Please.
okay.
Yeah, it would essentially just be, you know, labor, obviously, and this again is an estimate, but it's. I talked to our sales manager and he said it'd be a pretty accurate estimate. It would be right around 4,200.
What if in a couple of years, it's decided that we wanted to switch back to an in-house server? What would be the process for that?
You would just have to copy your data that's in SharePoint down to a storage repository locally, whether that's, you know, the server. You could even do, it could even be a computer, you know, anywhere that you can download it, you would just have to migrate it back from Microsoft to wherever you're going to put it. So, and that would just take as long as your download speed would allow it to download.
Paul, any questions?
I mean, I guess it really depends on what kind of,
And we're not going any direction tonight, just any questions.
yeah,
you
no,
might have.
I mean, just what our end use would be, you know, how many bells and whistles we want, really.
Mark, any?
I just noticed, I don't know if were they the ones that prepared the sheet or?
They are, yeah.
On disadvantages, it says requires training and discipline from employees to use it the way it was intended. It's kind of, I guess, multi-directional question here. Would that require our staff to learn how to do something new? I guess that's.
So you can set up SharePoint to function just like a traditional file server. So your users wouldn't have any difference in how they interact with it. But there's a ton of features that SharePoint can do that would require training, whether you wanted to share a document with an external user, meaning someone not within your organization, and say you only wanted them to have access to that document for 5 days, and then their access is taken away, right? So there's a lot of capabilities with SharePoint that in different types of features that you can set up that do require a little bit of training. We do instances for that. We'll do group training with workers, you know, for an hour every quarter, every half a year for new features as they get comfortable with it. We'll do train the trainer, right? So we train one person who can work with their users. So there's a lot of external sharing capabilities that do take some learning to do those features.
What are we using right now? Microsoft or Google?
We use Google Docs and we use Microsoft Office. Business.
Do we have any hardware considerations we gotta worry about as far as all our different
Well, if
locations.
we were going to bring in a server, we're also gonna have to bring in all new desktops or docking stations of some sort.
Is that
Because
with
that's-
Microsoft and Google?
If we were, well, if we were going to a server base, we have to have stuff because our desktops are so old. That was one of the reasons why I didn't do it in the past. So if you're looking at in-house here, you'd be looking at 5 new stations plus the server. So the one that I have here is about $17,000.
Who's that one from?
And so then, but if we went the other way, we were talking about possibly doing some docking stations for the new laptops we got last year. We could put ours in the docking station, and we can grab it and go home with it and other things set up the same way as we do at the office, so. I know, there's a few of us that do work from home periodically. Trying to make it as easy as possible.
Becky, any questions?
I don't have anything right now.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Move on then to item E, discussion regarding the hiring of a grant writer.
All right, so I did want to bring this forward just for discussion. After going to a few of meetings with the in the Wisconsin municipal managers meetings. I can be talking to another administrator and they're talking about some of the grants that they actually received that I didn't know anything about. I thought it might be worthwhile for us to actually have a grant writer in-house to try to, that could actually write grants the way that they are needed to be written to win the grants. So I could sit down and write a grant, but the chances of me writing a grant the first time that's going to be accepted is going to be, a lot less likely than the person that writes grants for a living. And a person that can go out and take a look and actually actively look for grants that would work on some of our projects. Like, is there a grant out there that would help us with the cost of moving our pit toilets to a sanitary type bathroom? I don't know, but maybe that's a possibility. I spoke with one administrator from Antioch, and she actually received a grant for her park, and it was yeah, she received a Vibrant Spaces grant for her park to help beautify her park. And she also received money from Wisconsin Economic Development grants. And she got money for EV stations for her parks. So that was just one person I was talking to about having grants written with some possible projects in mind for our parks and our DPW and whatever projects we might have in the future. Is it possible that we could be looking at a grant that might be able to cover that $103,000 path that we do not want to spend, road money on instead? But I think grants and donations are possibly the direction that we're going to, we're going to see municipalities going in the future to help fund these special projects that we can't keep expecting our growth to catch up to our projects, you know, in tax levy. So if we can get some of our projects paid for by either a donation type of a situation or grants, that might be a worthwhile project. And if we got $100,000 grant and we had to pay somebody, you know, I don't know how long it would take them to write it, say $5,000, it's definitely worthwhile, or even $20,000, it'd be worthwhile. I think the, some of the work that I did, just trying to understand, how do you actually hire a grant writer? What do you should be looking for? It was very clear that the best thing to look for is somebody that has written many grants and they're at a higher percentage of grants have been awarded. Having a less experienced person writing grants to save the amount of money per hour might not be beneficial if they have not won grants in the past. It's just something that I've done research on. So I'm bringing it to you just to kind of get you thinking about, is this something that we might want to look forward in the future? I did get somebody to write something up for us, so I kind of had an idea of what a cost would be for a grant writer. How are they going to work off of a percentage? Do they work off of an hourly? So, you know, being new to that, this type of workload, thought it'd be best to just get some kind of an idea of what it costs to have a grant writer and then talk to you to see if that's something that you might want to consider in the future.
Questions or comments?
And this wouldn't only be for parks. It would also be writing some of these grants for fire. We've been hearing about some entities when getting grants and it's covering extra personnel for their fire department. And so we don't have somebody in-house that has the experience to win grants for every, you know, at a high percentage of writing them. So thought it might be a good idea to bring it to you.
Well, just the limited experience I've had with the parks part of the grant thing, it's a very tricky process to navigate.
Mhm.
I don't know a lot about it. I would just want to be sure that if we were going to lay money out, that we got a, you know, significant return on that investment.
Right.
So that not only would these people be right, we wouldn't be directing them which grants to necessarily be working on. They would be going out and actively looking for grants for us.
That would, right, that would actually fit some of possible projects. So they might come up with a grant, they might find a grant and go, "Hey, I've got this grant that might fit for this or might help you in this direction. Do you have any possibilities that might fit in your, you know, any of your upcoming projects?" Trying to think of another person that I spoke with, another grant writer, while I was actually at the conference. And she was specifically talking about what was coming out of the state budget and some of the grants that were coming through on the EV stations. And they were saying that it's a possibility that what might come out. And this is somebody that's watching budgets and the state budget and watching the federal things that might come out that municipalities can tap into. And she was saying that they might be coming out with something for like a DPW trucks on EV. And then they give you a big grant for the truck, an EV grant, as well as an EV station to get you going. That was one of the possibilities that this woman was saying, if the budget goes the way that she was thinking it might go, and you never know because the budget isn't passed yet at the state level. But to have somebody actually actively out there looking for possible grants is going to be, I believe is going to be worthwhile for the village.
Becky, any thoughts?
We've talked about this many times over the years.
Okay.
And I think it's a great idea. I don't know a lot about, how you would go about finding, but it looks like maybe the easiest way is to go to a company that's part of their,
That's what they do.
so you don't hire someone, an individual person.
Mhm.
Because I don't know, I think that would be I mean, are they part-time? Are they full-time? Are they, So I think it's a good idea.
Right now, we do pay our engineers to.
Right, I know
Do our
they
CDBG
write,
grant and stuff, and we pay them handsomely when they write a grant
Right.
doc for us. But we don't have anyone that's helping us with our fire and our parks, buildings and structures or anything in this.
Right.
In the future.
Yeah, one of my concerns is a runaway cost on. Maybe look at page 6 of the proposal, there's a lot of research that needs to go into them understanding what we need.
Mhm.
And then also too, each identification of grant opportunities is $155 per hour. So, I mean, just right there on hard costs, identifying 10 grants per month is putting us at our estimated cost, just by looking for them.
Mhm.
So in reality, is that $1,500 more like the $3,000? I
It's,
guess,
yeah, I would say it would probably be closer to the 3,000 if they were gonna write that many grants and. I mean, we can specifically state what we're willing to pay for as well.
yeah, I mean, I guess
Uh,
they listed references for us. I would be looking to like similarly situated villages or cities that don't have staff that then contract with, well, this is McMahon. Like, for example, Winneconne, how often are they? How many proposals are they getting per month? Are they getting 10? Are they getting 2? And then of those 10 or 2, how many of them are actually moving to the next step of writing for them?
Mhm.
Yeah, it'd be nice to
I
think that we would return on investment more than what we're spending,
Right,
but is that the reality? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, but I didn't want to do any research if you guys were like, no, we're not gonna spend.
I think it's worth looking into for sure. But I mean, just like the list that Mark points out, I mean, I think we could do the top 3 ourselves. I don't think we would need them to decide what our priorities are. We would know what our priorities are.
Right.
So I think we could, knock a few of those things off just ourselves.
Mhm.
I think it's worth looking into.
So we'd probably want to see a few firms potentially to see costs and what they offer, I'm assuming.
And
Yeah, and
we
Yeah, I
can
mean,
talk
what
to
is-
some of the municipalities and see what the services that they've been given and.
Sure,
I
what
think
does
it's
the reality look like? And it doesn't just have to be, I mean, McMahon is a great company, but it doesn't just have to be them.
Right. This was just I put it out on the site and they were the first one to respond. I wanted to get something to the meeting, but then since then I've had 2 or 3 others respond to the question, so. Can move forward, and even the people that I spoke with, the grant writers that I spoke with in the, at the conference, I told them not to call me until after the 17th of April, because I knew what we were in the middle of. And I wanted to make sure that we were expecting to move everything out of the office and then move back. Our stuff, I didn't want somebody talking to me about grant writing while I don't have a computer in my office and everything's sitting in here at the time. Which, by the way, we got pushed back because Merton didn't move in, so we won't be moving the equipment this weekend, so I will do some more research on it now that I think you're favorable at looking at something.
One
Thank
thing
you.
The government's been good at the last couple of years is taxing us and giving us our money back in grants.
Yep.
Calling it free.
Yeah.
Might as well go after it.
Yeah.
All right, any other discussion on that?
Mm-mm.
All right. Item F is discussion regarding paid on premise and fire department staffing. So I asked that this be placed on the agenda. We are. I think everybody understands that fire departments are very much in competition for people right now, and we are very much at the bottom end of being able to retain a lot of POCs and obviously full-timers also. Even with our newest additions of wages, we're still seem to be on the lower end of things. After talking to a lot of fire department personnel, one of the biggest things right now has been the fact that we do not do a paid on premise. This is not a cheap ordeal. This is essentially would become paying firefighters to stay in our station overnight. There is some debate on whether or not we can ask people to even be in the station if the engaged to be waiting or waiting to be engaged discussion. Yeah, listen to you.
Have a flashback.
Are you?
Yeah.
Initially, when Doug and I had talked about this in the past, I mean, this was a $300,000 to $400,000 endeavor. I'm not asking for any action tonight, other than I want to bring this back at the next meeting with information. But just to prepare, I want to get the shock of the dollar amount out of everybody right now, just so we can come back and have a good discussion about it, hopefully next month. I believe we could pay for this either out of ARPA for 1 year, but that's a 1 year thing. But the big thing that would make this sustainable for the period right now is the fact that our interest income is through the roof. The treasurer has done a really good job of moving money and
Yes. Negotiating.
shaking up the banks to give us better rates. So we are actually gonna be, if everything holds, now obviously that's debatable, but we will be well over 400,000 above in our interest income above budget. So this makes this affordable. And even if it drops partially next year, let's say this year we would use ARPA funds, potentially next year we would be building up that interest income. We could put that in a fund, and then next year, even if interest falls, we would have money to fall back on, and then we have time to build up our operating budget. Hopefully the state actually does what they say.
Yeah.
And gives us some of that 1% money back, which could help do that, but we just had some discussions with Sussex about budgets back and forth, just comparing fire department budgets, and we're 700,000 behind them. And we're very similar. I know they're a lot smaller, but we're very similar. I mean, we have 2 stations, they have 1. And they're 700,000 ahead of us, so. This is definitely gonna be a point of discussion. And when we were getting quotes even from the village or city of Pewaukee. I mean, we needed at least $400,000 more to be viable. For at that time with a contract, so. A lot of different things to look at and talk about with that, but I'd like to do that at the next meeting. Anybody have any questions or thoughts on anything they want brought back at that meeting? I know I just kind of threw it at you right here, but, or just bring the basics and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, only thing I thought about was, I'd just like to be presented with a need for it. You know, I look at it as, we need this at this time. This many firefighters need to be paid on premise on this day. Versus there's 7 of them available this day to work, so now all of them are paid on
Right.
premise, but we really only need 3.
An actual plan of what
Yeah.
we need.
Like, some kind of control, not just, hey, we got these guys. It's the middle of winter, there's 15 POPs that are available to work. Now we're paying 15 POPs when we don't have the necessity for them.
Right, I agree with you. This would have to be a
Schedule.
planned out, and I mean, initial talks were. Less than what we probably even need, to be honest, because I don't even think we could afford to bring us up to like an NFPA standard, to be honest with you. But this would be. At least an effort to bring us up to this and get where a lot of other communities already are.
Well, it would help with our retention then too, right?
Well, and it's 2 different areas. So we have the full timers, and then we have the paid. This would be paid on premise, but the POCs. And it is 2 different groups of people, but we're losing that part-time labor. To other departments because they are paying us.
What does POC stand for? Just. Paid on,
Yeah.
okay,
Right,
got it,
sorry.
okay.
And I mean, there have been different proposals back in the day. Doug had kind of a hybrid that he proposed where it was like we're paying minimum wage and then as they went on a call, we upped that. That was a kind of a hybrid thing. It does look like a lot of communities have gone away from that. Doesn't mean we can't talk about it. Just, we're in a bidding war right now,
Mhm.
and it's, we're not kind of behind, we are definitely behind. And we've made drastic improvements. I mean, if I did I didn't bring my laptop tonight for some reason. I don't know, Kat's having fun with it apparently, but I had figured out actually a lot of the numbers on it. I mean, we have increased our fire department budget considerably. I mean, it has doubled since 2014, and we are still lagging quite a bit behind.
And it's a public safety thing, too, so it is something that needs to be addressed.
So there's a lot of talk we're gonna have, I'm sure, in the next year about fire departments because we need to.
Mhm.
So, all right. Next item is adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Mark. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Paula. For discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're out at 8:47 for.